So today we're shifting topics a little bit. We're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to talk about what's the latest, greatest in Bitcoin, the stuff that we're doing. And then towards the end of the talk, I'm going to drop some alpha. So stick around and see where we take it. A little bit about myself. I'm an engineer by training. I did my PhD in computer science at Princeton and got pulled into Bitcoin back in 2013. The funny story I tell people is what 100,000 feels right now is what $100 used to feel back then, right? So we wouldn't buy when Bitcoin would go above $100. We'll feel like it's too expensive, and we'll buy all the dips. It will come down to like $70, $80, and so on. That feels like a long time ago. I got pulled into this rabbit hole, and I think sort of like fell in love with Bitcoin, fell in love with this industry. And the work that we've been doing with STAX is how to make Bitcoin programmable, how to actually take Bitcoin to 1 billion people. And let's dive in and talk about it. So the first thing I want to tell you guys is the interesting thing happening in the industry is Bitcoin dominance is actually going up. So Bitcoin dominance is this metric where you look at how much capital is in Bitcoin versus all the other projects. But the interesting insight here is that the rest of the projects are actually, there are more projects now than there were 10 years ago. Actually exponentially more projects. But Bitcoin is still sort of like holding up, and the dominance of Bitcoin is actually increasing compared to the entire rest of the industry, right? So why is that happening? I think there are two things. One is outside of the industry, Bitcoin is actually establishing itself as a very, very different asset, like a different asset class. Like it's not just digital gold anymore. I think people are actually trading it, and people are moving into Bitcoin capital as a store of value, and it's sort of like separating itself for even risk assets or stocks, and it's trading very differently. But even within crypto, like that's the thing that you guys should be more interested in, because we're all in this industry. Even within the industry, there were a lot of naysayers that people were like, Bitcoin is like, pet rock, it's this, it's that, it's never gonna go anywhere. But even within the industry, some of the largest critics have sort of like come around, and they're understanding why Bitcoin is Bitcoin. And there's a reason that it doesn't change. There's a reason that it's durable. And a lot of people actually rotate their capital back into Bitcoin, and they look at it as a stable thing, right? So Bitcoin staying number one is actually good for the rest of the industry, because you want a standard. You want large institutions would not come into the industry if there's a lot of fluctuation. If they don't even know what thing is going to be here 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. So Bitcoin is actually giving this industry a lot of stability, and then it helps the rest of the industry mature as well. So if you're a builder and you look at Bitcoin dominance going up, you're like, okay, what can I do with this? There's almost like $2 trillion in capital, and most of that is just sitting there. People aren't really using it because the Bitcoin protocol is very simple by design. It's very, very sort of like basic, but there's a lot more you can do on top of it. So this is sort of like, I call this the Holy Grail challenge in Bitcoin, and I'll describe what it is. So at the same time, Bitcoin needs to be very simple, and it doesn't change. Bitcoin is valuable because it doesn't change, right? So if I want to make a protocol change to Bitcoin, it's basically not going to happen, right? Many people have tried, and Bitcoin derives value out of that, because everyone can trust the fact that, I can literally dust up my 2013 Bitcoin software, boot it up on a node today, like 12 years, 13 years later, and it will still sync up to the same chain tip today. Imagine doing that with Ethereum, right? Ethereum used to be proof of work. Now it's proof of stake. Ethereum used to do something else. Now it's doing something different, right? So there's that type of durability, that type of stability basically doesn't exist. But it comes with a downside. That means that, Bitcoin technology is old, sort of clunky, and it's very, very hard to make these changes. So if you want to make Bitcoin programmable, think almost like a triangle, right? Like there are three features. One is you want BTC to be programmable. You want it as programmable as ETH or Solana or Sui, right? How do we do that while maintaining the security of Bitcoin? Because that's what everybody likes, right? Like Bitcoin is really secure. It has a lot of hash power. Like how do we maintain the security so that it's as secure as self-custodial Bitcoin in your wallet? And we have great UX. Again, Bitcoin is old and clunky. Block times are 10 to 40 minutes. If you guys are using Sui or Solana, you guys are used to really, really fast speeds. How do we get all these three properties? And people have tried, literally have tried like 10 plus years People have tried so many different solutions going all the way back. This is pre-Lightning. You guys might have heard of Lightning. There are all these different solutions in Bitcoin. We're trying to square this, and this is an extremely hard technical challenge to work on. This is the work that we've been doing. A little history here is, there was an era where people thought of Bitcoin as digital gold. Really, it's like a pet rock, not very interesting. 2 years ago, so we did a lot of work trying to change the Bitcoin culture. That we brought a lot of developers in. We basically tried educating people that Bitcoin is more than digital gold. You can actually do interesting things with it, and that worked. Like 2 years ago, I think it's almost like a Bitcoin renaissance that happened, and the STAX community actually played a huge role in that in the background. And so what we ended up doing is we ended up attracting a lot of developers. Capital started flowing in, investors came in, they started funding a bunch of these applications, both in STAX and other L2s that sort of appeared. But I still think of that as the experimental era, right? Like you still don't have major sort of like breakout applications where billions and billions of dollars of Bitcoin is actually getting deployed. We're getting there. And the next era, I think of that as the Bitcoin dominance era. Like Bitcoin dominance is already at 65%. Bitcoin is not going anywhere. Once it becomes programmable and easily deployable everywhere, I think it's just going to go through the roof, right? Like that's like one of the core theses that we have in terms of what's going to happen. And that's really what STAX is doing. STAX is activating Bitcoin capital. It's a very mission-driven community. People like myself, other engineers who truly, truly believe in Bitcoin. Like we literally keep all our saving, like life saving in Bitcoin. And that's like sort of how we are. And we look at the work that Satoshi did as Satoshi sort of like, started this amazing movement and disappeared. But we feel like we're carrying that mission forward. Like we want to take Bitcoin to 1 billion people. We want to make sure that everyone in the world has access to it. They're actually using Bitcoin, not just like, saving it in a cold storage somewhere, but they're actually using BTC. And we want to take this freedom technology to the rest of the world. And it's something that we are extremely excited about. That's what the STAX project is. Technically, it's a Bitcoin L2, right? Because if anything, Bitcoin needs L2s more than anybody else, right? You probably know about L2s on Ethereum or some other places, but I feel like Ethereum, in the Ethereum world, ETH already has programmability at the L1 level. Yes, you need L2s in Ethereum for scalability or other things, but on Bitcoin, you actually need it way more because Bitcoin has no programmability at the L1 level. So most of the things in Bitcoin are actually going to happen on L2s, but they are sort of like very hard to build because Bitcoin is, again, very simple, very old. So there isn't a lot of support you get from the L1 itself when you're trying to do it. A little history about STAX. So it's a US-based project. We were actually the first project that did a SEC qualified offering in the US. And we were very proud of the fact that, okay, we wanted to be transparent. We wanted to bring everyone along, even the general public in the US, not just the large funds. We wanted to be a grassroots sort of a thing. And that sort of like put us on this trajectory where we had to decentralize a lot. Right? Like, so the flip side of doing a SEC qualified offering was we had to sort of like dismantle all the original company and people like decentralized, but it fits very well with the decentralized nature of Bitcoin as well. So in STAX, there's actually like no single big company. Like there's lots of like, smaller companies, people, they're sort of like doing their own thing. And then we sort of like took that into building a very, very organic community. So we're sort of proud of the fact that within Bitcoin, we are the fastest growing developer sort of like ecosystem. And that's a big change from if you look at Bitcoin culture. When you come to an event like this, you meet a lot of builders. If you go to Bitcoin Miami, if you go to a lot of Bitcoin conferences, you notice that there aren't a lot of developers who actually show up at Bitcoin events. There are more mainstream people who look at Bitcoin as an economic tool, and they look at it as a financial tool more than a developer and platform. And we have been the force that is actually trying to change that and trying to build a lot of developers to the community as well, and give them BTC. They're sort of like, give them the tools that they need to actually program Bitcoin. So very quickly, there are two big things we did recently. One is called the Nakamoto Release, and that was targeting the UX part of Bitcoin. Instead of waiting 10 to 40 minutes for Bitcoin blocks, now you can actually use BTC, but with like, a couple of seconds of transaction processing time. So the way we did it is you do your transaction on the L2, it's really fast, you get your confirmation pretty quickly, but when a Bitcoin block comes, it might be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, you are actually secured by 100% of the Bitcoin hash power. That's a really nice property to have. Imagine you're doing a stable coin transfer, but as soon as the Bitcoin block comes, you're now backed by the full hash power of the Bitcoin network. And that is something that is increasing. Bitcoin dominance is going up, Bitcoin hash rate is going up, and STAX sort of like piggybacks on that security, and you get that for free. And so that was the Nakamoto launch. That was pretty interesting because people in Bitcoin haven't seen that UX, right? Like you should really go and try using your BTC on STAX. And if you're used to the clunky old Bitcoin wallets, this feels like a night and day difference. It's like, oh my God, it's a modern wallet, it's great UX, the transactions are going fast, and people in Bitcoin have never seen anything like that before. So it was like super interesting to me personally, like for someone who's been in Bitcoin for so many years, now using our own products and seeing how well they're doing was amazing. So the second thing that we did is SPDC, which is, think of that as Bitcoin running on the L2 rails. You lock your Bitcoin on the main chain, so it's always one-to-one backed, and you move it into the L2. And that's where the security stuff comes in, and I'll talk about it a little bit. So when we launched it, we capped it first at 1,000 BTC. Think of that as like almost approximately $100 million. That filled up very, very quickly. Then we raised it to 3,000 Bitcoin, which is approximately $300 million. Literally within 24 hours, that cap was reached, which showed us that there's a lot of demand. There's a lot of potential, Bitcoin, again, between 1.5 trillion to 2 trillion in capital, and people really don't know what to do with it, right? Like they're mostly just sitting on this capital. It's sitting passively. So when we enable them to actually actively deploy their capital, there's a lot of pending demand, which we're noticing. So we'll probably raise the cap again and see where we go. And I think once you get like billions of dollar BTC actually deposited and flowing around, I think then it becomes large enough that the industry can no longer ignore it. They're like, okay, Bitcoin is here. People are actually deploying it in DeFi and so on. So the way SPDC works today is that there is a set of signers. It's an open network. People can come and join, and we're slowly sort of like decentralizing it more. And we're very proud of the fact that there are a lot of institutional signers, people like BitGo, Figment, and so on, who are already part of the network. So when you lock your BTC right now, currently, you're sort of like relying on this set of signers, the open network of signers, who will help you withdraw your Bitcoin back from the L2 to the L1. And of course, we take security insanely seriously. Like you can imagine, even today, $300 million of BTC just sitting there. Hopefully, there's going to be more, potentially billions of dollars of Bitcoin. And this is computer software. It's open source software. And we have to take it extremely seriously because people really, really value their Bitcoin. Nobody wants to lose their BTC. So that's both. Think of that as like that's our job number one, to make sure that software is as secure as humanly possible. So interestingly, the product market fit that we are noticing is actually Bitcoin capital is chasing yields. Bitcoin has been, again, this passive asset. It just sits in your wallet. But if you go to Ethereum, if you go to Solana, if you go to Sui, you notice that these assets are actually yield generating. You can actually lock your assets in staking, you start earning a yield, but people couldn't do that in Bitcoin at all, right? So it's a giant asset, no yielding opportunities. So that's the thing that we enable, and we're noticing that there's a strong product market fit where Bitcoin capital is actually moving. So today, if you just deposit your Bitcoin into STAX, there's an initial sort of like initiative going on where you can get a 3 to 4% yield just by being the early user of the L2, by just depositing your Bitcoin. If you want to do more, if you want to provide liquidity to a DEX, you can actually earn more yields. And if you are really sort of like degen or advanced sort of like institution, you can borrow against your Bitcoin. There are Bitcoin-backed stable coins people are building, and you can actually go and provide liquidity there and sort of like compound the type of yield opportunities over there. This is a trend that I think is only going to go up because the amount of capital that's there, and they're chasing sort of like any sort of returns they can get on their BTC. And I think we're going to see Bitcoin go from a passive asset to a productive asset where even large institutions actually come in and they start participating in these things. So I'll give you a little high level. The geek and the engineer in me is like really excited about this. Going back to the triangle where you want security, you want things to be self-custodial, you want great UX, and you want programmability, right? And I think I wouldn't share a lot of the details here, but at a high level, we've been doing a lot of R&D on this. So the next upgrades of SPDC, I think we're going to crack all three of these things in one go. And that's going to be big news for the industry. But I'm sort of like giving you guys a heads up that it's coming soon. So speaking of dropping alpha, SPDC is coming to Sui. All right, this is going to go live on Twitter and other places soon, but let me give you a background for why we are doing this. So we believe that in a multi-chain future for BTC, and what that sort of like means is that, again, Bitcoin is not going to remain just on the Bitcoin L1. Just like BTC is coming into STAX, which is an L2, we think of that as sort of like the local economy for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to go to Ethereum, it's going to go to Solana, it's going to go to Sui. And it's already happening, right? Like there is WBTC, I think it has around $10 billion of Bitcoin on Ethereum, and there's a single sort of like player, BitGo, that's in the middle. So this is a thing that's already happening. It has sort of like demand. People want to use Bitcoin on these chains. So might as well do it in the proper way. We think of ourselves as sort of like the top builders on the Bitcoin side who care about security, who care about decentralization, who are sort of like building the best Bitcoin asset that is programmable. So Sui is a great ecosystem. It's growing a lot. We know the founders, and we sat down and we were like, okay, people are going to end up using Bitcoin on Sui anyway. Let's do it properly. Let's join forces and make sure that SPDC is the asset that people end up using on Sui. So really excited about this partnership. You'll learn more about it on the socials and the news that's coming out. But we see it as part of our strategy to take Bitcoin wherever the users are. Second, small alpha is, as part of this partnership, Sui is going to become a signer on the SPDC network as well. All right, I'm really excited to be here, to be working with all these developers. I love the energy from this event, and we're going to take some of that back when we work on our Bitcoin partnership. And hopefully the developers here would soon be able to use SPDC in the application, and this like one step forward for bringing Bitcoin to the world. Thank you so much.